Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg. Welcome to our show about all things aging well. And today I want to motivate your mind to becoming a healthier you. My guest today is Dr. Leah Reddick Cunningham, emotional health and wellness educator. She's a registered nurse, a motivational speaker, author, health consultant, and life coach. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I appreciate being on your show. Thank you for the invitation,
Oh,
and I
my
hope
pleasure.
you've been well also.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Good to
Leah,
hear it.
I asked you to come on the show to talk about a mental health issue that is rampant among us, and that's
Mm,
depression. I know that there's so much going on, but I want you, first of all, start out a little bit about what you do and how you teach and your methods and that, and then we can talk about, what's going on in the world today to how
sure,
to help people.
sure, I'll be glad to. Yeah. So, in what I do, I consider myself a emotionally health and wellness educator. And the reason for that is we don't know enough about how to really be emotionally well. And so I have a real specialty in that, and it's called motivating your mind to become a healthier you, because everything starts in the mind. Everything starts with a thought. And once we can learn how to have healthy thoughts and be able to override a lot of overwhelming negativity, then we can continue to have a healthier person, be a healthier body, be a healthier contributor to society. So I try to help people through my coaching program have healthier mindsets, and that's overall becomes a healthier person.
And is it challenging now for you to coach people? Do you find they're harder to reach due to the pandemic and all the craziness in the world going on right now?
Interestingly enough, it's easier. More people are looking for help, how
Mhm.
to have healthier mindsets, because we've been overwhelmed through the pandemic. We've been overwhelmed through the social distancing. We've been overwhelmed by the negativity in the politics and the news. We've been overwhelmed by all the things happening on with our kids who have been affected by this. So people are looking for help, and they realize they're becoming depressed. They realize they're becoming having overwhelming thoughts of negativity, leading to all kinds of illness and ill will. So they're looking to see how they can be a healthier person.
The last few years have really wrought havoc on all of us. The politics, COVID, wars cropping up all over the
Yeah.
world, financial crisis. And as we near the winter holidays, I'd imagine depression is going to be increasing too. I think we know it's kind of a self-explanatory question, but why is it so rampant now? What it it's we've always been able to cope. What's different now?
Well, I believe as a nation, as a society, we are emotionally bankrupt. We're emotionally bankrupt. Our emotions have been depleted in trying to deal with things we had no control over. And so when you have no control over things, you spin, right? And so it's become more rampant because it's been compounded. We have not been able to go from one particular area that we have no control over, that's been overwhelming to us, to a next area, from the politics to the COVID to whatever we personally are dealing with. And so we never get a chance to have a resolution. And so it becomes more excessive. And then going into the holidays for the most part has helped us to remember either way, happy
Yeah,
times or sad times.
right,
And a
right.
lot of times holidays cause us to remember sad times, lost loved ones at that time and so forth. So depression is very rampant now because of many things.
I also know that unfortunately we're going to have, this is very timely, we are going to have another surge. COVID is not
Yeah,
gone, and more people are going to be isolated, against their will, if you will. There's going to be less. I'm certainly not having 30 people for Thanksgiving and
right, right.
the fall holiday and winter holidays. I can't. People aren't going to come. People won't come. So this is going to be even worse. So what do we do?
Well, for one thing, we have to realize that it's almost like grieving a little bit, And so the same way we would deal with grieving for a loss of loved one when we're mourning an actual death, it's the same thing. And we have to learn how to cope with that. For instance, I consider when we talk about even depression, I consider it the mind is grieving.
Right.
The mind is grieving losses. It's grieving the inability to do things in large gathering settings, as you discussed with the holidays. Being able to get together, even be able to go outside. Right now, we're so afraid of different attacks, in our society,
Yeah.
and so we have to learn how to do things differently. We have to learn how to different approach. We have to really learn how to obtain good coping skills. You mentioned that a little earlier about coping skills being kind of like a no-brainer. But interesting enough, a lot of people don't have them.
Mm.
They don't have good coping skills, how to deal with some of the areas of their lives that cause them to be frustrated because we don't have any control over it. But you are able to get control over it just in small bites, different steps. A lot of it is helping to get help, working with somebody. I always say you always need someone to do life with.
Right. Right.
And that's important. You get with someone to do life with, and we do things differently, but we can still accomplish it.
Leah, something I talk about on the show a lot that
Mm-hmm.
relates to emotions and physical. Again, a lot of people don't want to work out alone, so they don't bother
Right,
exercising. They find a walking buddy. A lot of people don't like to eat alone, so they don't eat well
right.
because they're either taking food out or they're just scrounging around in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
We all step up to the plate when someone comes over. You set the table, or
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
kind of. It's again that whole thing about accountability. So one thing, I guess this is more than a statement than anything else, and I always say this to my baby boomer friends that are our age. We had grandparents and parents around us, and aunts and uncles and cousins and just people, and we had communities,
Mm-hmm.
and we grew up with all the same people for however many years. This doesn't exist anymore. People don't have communities. People, I mean, I have neighbors, but I don't feel comfortable like I did as a child running over to the neighbor, or we would go out and find our friends, or you'd get to
Right.
school and it was there. Now it's like you need permission to go to somebody's house, and people live thousands of miles away from their parents. This must play a huge role in emotional wellness as well.
Yes, it does. Isolation.
Yes.
Isolation is a big, yeah, it's a big part in a lot of things that people are experiencing because you're right. It's not like just knowing your neighbors anymore. Our neighbors sometimes can be your worst enemy, unbeknownst to you until something happens, right?
Right.
How good do you know your neighbors? I mean,
Right.
as well as the last maybe cup of sugar you borrowed or,
Right.
the friendly hello as you leave the driveway. But beyond that, how well do you really know them?
I know.
So, yeah, it's troubling. You're absolutely right. Um, but the other thing is that we can't be afraid. We have to somehow be able to connect. Now, I'm not suggesting that people should just connect with anyone and everyone, but you have to find people that you trust
Right.
because isolation is like a breeding ground for depression. Isolation is a breeding ground for increased stress and spinning out of control with things that you can't deal with. And so we find that we have some networks if we look hard and close, even starting within families. You may not be able to connect with them in person all the time. But what happened to get right back to the good old telephone?
Yes.
Everyone texts. I mean, can we see it, hear your voice? You still have a physical voice. We moved away from things that work, Patricia. Those things work, writing letters, picking
Oh
up the
yeah.
phone, hearing the voice, hearing a comforting, someone that you trust and know that will respond back to you. A text message takes out all the emotions, it removes the face, so you don't really know what people are thinking or how they're really feeling. And you certainly don't know how they responded just through a couple of letters and emojis. So we have to get back to some of the basics that work, that connects us emotionally.
Yeah, and like I said, with the challenge of the pandemic, I'm hoping people can find it in very small ways. Just one
Always.
person that you could physically be around, just to that there's some human contact that we seem to not be having. Now,
Exactly.
Leah, how and why does stress affect our ability to get out of depression? It's sort of that catch-22 is you're stressed out and you get depressed, and then you can't get to either one, and they keep
Right.
hitting each other. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because it's cyclic. Stress is causes depression to be cyclic. We go from one stress area or one stressful, environment to another without really dealing with the stress. we're famous as a people to not dealing with stuff. We don't like to deal with it. We just like to move on. And so we move on chronologically. It doesn't do anything. It will catch up with you in many ways, physically, biologically, meaning your physical health, emotionally, relationship wise, on your job. So we have to learn how to deal with the stress that causes depression to be cyclic in our lives. And so, how do we deal with stress? Again, it's not really a big, no brainer. We have to deal with stress as it comes. We have to confront it. We have to see what it is that's causing us a problem. Sometimes it's very simple, but because we don't deal with it, it compounds to the next area or the next environment that causes stress. They tell you to remove yourself from the stress. Is that always possible? Perhaps, even as much as it's going outside,
Mhm.
even as much as going outside. Because this is the thing, Patricia, when you leave the area, whether it be indoors or outdoors, or whether it be among certain family members, anytime you get up and physically make a move, your mind has to physically make a move, has
Yes.
to physically, mentally make an adjustment to where you just now moved to. So it's simple. But if you do it consistently, you can really develop new habits of how to deal with stress, how to deal with things that overwhelm us. But the depression continues to come because our stresses are cyclic and we don't cope with them. We just kind of move away from them instead of dealing with it.
Part of aging well is being brave, and part of being
Yeah.
brave is to take a look and say, you know what? I look at this, wow, I've been struggling with this since I was 20, and I remember
Mm-hmm.
thinking it'll get better when I get older, and then struggling with it at 30, and again at 40 and 50 and
Yeah.
60. And you look back and you say, my whole life this has been something I haven't dealt with. And that's where I get back to being brave and being accepting
Good.
where you are today. And all the
Mm-hmm.
things we think that people don't like about us or that we stress about, the truth of the matter, nobody's really looking. It's all in
No
your
one's
head,
really
right?
looking.
Right?
I
It's
like
your
that.
own.
It is in our head. Mm-hmm.
Yep,
And
yep.
we have more thoughts. And by the way, our science, evidence based, will show us that we have more thoughts, more conversations with ourselves in our heads than with people.
That's
So, mm-hmm,
yeah, we're all living in our own worlds.
absolutely.
In your bio, I noticed you have a quote, "Don't measure your life by where you have been, but by where you want to go," which I
Yeah.
love, which brings us to your book. Leah is also a very accomplished author. Bad Memories Sabotage Healthy Emotions. So, how do we process our past? Even if it's painful, and we want to use that to inform a healthy
Yeah.
future. Yes, go to therapy and write a journal, and we hear all these things, but
Right. Right.
again, what's one step, one little thing we could be doing towards that?
The biggest of it, okay, and the most simplistic of it is don't avoid where you've been. We try to forget by just simply just acting like it never happened, but it did.
Yeah.
It's a part of the journey, and we all have one. We all have someone where we started. And part of that journey, typically, if we lived anywhere past, whatever age we're at now, okay, we had some bad experiences. And so we have to learn how to deal with them by not avoiding that they happen. So, what
Right.
am I saying? You have to confront it. And so you confront it by looking at what happened. Now, some of them are very tragic. And so it causes us to have these painful memories, okay, as I call it, bad memories. And it literally will sabotage you as to where you're going, a healthy emotion, because it holds you hostage. You become hostage to the memory. And the memory will cause you to avoid trying to do anything in your future. And why is that? Because you haven't dealt with what actually took place. Now, because it's painful, yes, we don't want to look at it, but it can be more painful when you don't,
Right.
because it'll show up as something that's happening today when it did it. It happened 15, 20, even 30 years ago. And so the things I would say to people, you have to confront it. Don't confront it alone. You get some help.
Yeah.
We have to realize it's okay to get help. It's a stigmatization that therapy is for, the cray craze,
Right. Right. Yeah.
modern day vernacular, right? But that's a myth. Come on. We would go to a specialist for what? If we had something with our bones, we go see orthopedics, we go
Right.
see cardiologists, we go see, gastroenterologists. So
Sure.
you go see a clinician, a psychologist, mental health therapist. It's okay. It's good. And so, but you have to you have to confront it so it doesn't sabotage you or hold you hostage to the memory for, for forever, quote unquote.
Leah, I think you and I as a team, now that we're here together, is if I could, because it brings up emotions for all of us when we think about
Hmm.
things that we haven't dealt with.
Yeah,
There is help for everything. There is free help for everything.
yeah,
There are hotlines. There are 800 numbers. There are 12-step groups,
yeah,
not just for drug and alcohol, but for, God forbid, rape victims, or
yeah,
people who've had trauma, people have had people killed in front of them, people who served in wars. And again, they are all equally as important in my mind.
absolutely.
Each thing that you may have dealt with that someone else might think it's minor. um People who were abused as children never came forward.
Yeah,
Nowadays, people getting their parents arrested. It's a
yes,
whole different world. But what I think what I want to say, and what we hopefully we can do this together, is to just get people to take that one step to reach out. Because also, there's the stigma, as you know, of all people, because this is what you do, is if someone does not want to be diagnosed with general
yeah,
anxiety disorder or clinical depression because there's something wrong with you, or people who are depressed are always committing suicide, or they're not fun to be
yeah,
around, or and nothing could be further from the truth. I can't emphasize that enough when
absolutely.
I hear this, and I
Yeah,
don't know necessarily that any one person has all the answers. You need to find your path, and
exactly.
the one that works for you. So I love what you're saying, is to just one step at a time, one thing at a
Yeah.
time, but confront
Hmm.
it, confront it.
Right.
I'm Patricia Greenberg, and we're talking about wellness through mindfulness. My guest is Dr. Leah Reddick Cunningham, a registered nurse, motivational speaker and author, health consultant, and life coach. She's based in Florida, and you can find more information about her, her work, and her book at www.drleahreddickcunningham.com. And you can also email or me or check on my website, and I can get you the information. Leah, you're a veteran of the Navy. And the military is a highly disciplined environment that forces you, as we all know, to comply with authority. How does this perfectly scheduled, well-oiled machine affect our mental health? It may not be for everyone.
No, it's not. You have to have a certain, real strong constitution for one. Be able to be disciplined and not really someone that bucks against authority because it's difficult, it's challenging. In one regards, when you talk about it, it's you have to succumb to authority. And sometimes when your authority becomes not someone that you trust, it can be confusing and challenging to you because then sometimes your authority can be your oppressor.
Right.
And so, in that regard, sometimes what do you do? Often, always believe as to whatever story you may need to tell as someone that has a higher rank, higher authority, supposed to be trying to get you to a point where they can utilize you in a case of war or even defense or just in peacetime. So you have to be able to take orders, right?
Right.
And so when they give you an order, is everything in your best interest as a team member or someone that you're trying to work together in order for it to work well as a unit? Not always. So we develop, as you know, some of us PTSD, post-traumatic, syndrome disorder. And that has to do with something that you dealt with that was a traumatizing. And in the military, I, for one, I had a pretty decent experience, thank God. I was in there for 8 years and 4 months, and I came out with 3 medals. And so I'm an honorable discharge, a veteran, but there's many that came out that are not. And so when you talk about a perfect schedule, it's perfect sometimes to only to those that utilize people in the wrong way so that their schedule's perfect, because it's not always perfect for everyone.
Got it.
Yeah.
Did you get your nursing degree through the military?
Interestingly, I started some of it because, well, Patricia, in high school, we were able to be bivocational. So
Yes,
I actually
right.
was able to, I was actually able to embark on my nursing degree as a practical nurse through Border Cooperative Educational Services, BOCES.
Yes, uh-huh.
And then I continued on through the military and I became one of their corpsmen. which I
Very
worked at the
nice.
hospital, did some kind of a little bit of battlefield dressings as far as training,
Hmm.
and then I went on and pursued it at UCF
Okay.
in Florida.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
so I ask you all this as a frame of reference is that some of what we deal with and depression with older people is they didn't fulfill their dreams and they didn't pursue
True.
the things that they want to do. And
Yes.
I always like to say, and I'd love your take on this, it's okay,
Yeah.
right?
It
And
is
that you
okay.
can do something different now. You may not have the dream you had at 18 or 20, but
Right.
you can modify that dream or do something, the example I always use is that a kid who wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, well, 100,000 kids try out for every spot.
Right.
So maybe you didn't that, but as you get older, maybe you could join a fun softball league on Sundays with your friends. There's
Exactly.
ways of kind of, reaching out and pursuing that. And that is to me, that's a depression killer. If you can get out and just do something that's fun or something you always loved, you want to paint, you want to read, you want to write, it's a big
Right.
wide world out there of things
That's
that
exactly
people can
right.
pursue, right?
Yeah. Our dreams don't have to die. Our
Yeah.
dreams don't have to die because we didn't achieve them as we saw it in our mind.
Mhm.
We just have to be able to alter them, adjust. It's just like any season of our life. We have seasons of our lives because we change, we mature, we move away, our lives take different directions. We get married, we have kids. It's like, oh boy, I really wanted to be a starlet. I wanted to be a Hollywood,
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
really
Mhm.
extraordinary. But
Mhm.
our lives in and of themselves are extraordinary because they're our lives. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, so we can, so whatever direction or path our lives ended up taking, we adjust our goals to meet where we are now. They may not be exact the steps, the by steps that we saw or hoped, but they can still be somewhat a part of your life today if you're just willing to adapt them. Just adjust and adapt. That's
Absolutely.
how we're trained in the military. You
Yeah.
adjust and adapt.
Yeah, and then so that's a benefit from it.
Yeah.
What is the common source of depression in young, healthy, highly active
Mm.
adults?
Wow, our kids right now, our teens really are suffering a lot from a lot of things that adults are suffering for. At least adults have a little bit more of an outlet because we're adults. We're supposed to know how to kind of combat it as far as talking about it, recognizing it. Our children don't really have that type of a voice. Now, teens are still dealing with a lot of things that some of us as teens may have dealt with, teen pressure, but it's worse because they have cyberbullying.
Yes.
You have that, and we have the National Network of Depression Centers, NNDC, that actually says the current, Patricia, hear me, current leading disability in young adults 15 to 44 is depression.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Why is that a thing?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, and but because of the pressure of what they have to deal with in school, the shaming that goes on, the cyberbullying, the being forced because they want to be accepted. So they actually end up being forced to experiment with drugs and sex and party and alcohol, all the things that at some point they probably would do, but at their own choosing, at their own, opportunities. But, you have this force thing when you want to be accepted, and no one wants to be rejected, especially not in your teenage. So, and then you have the school shootings. So they have a lot of
Oh,
stress, a lot of
yes.
fears,
Yes.
and they don't talk. Our young people don't talk. So you have to learn how to recognize the change in behaviors and the change of attitudes and lack of interest. And so we have to be more observant of our young people, of our children. We can't just assume, well, that's my child. I know them. Well, yes, you do, but also look to see the changes.
Right.
Because one thing, Patty, is that there's a thing called high functioning depression,
Hmm.
and people can go ahead and walk this life,
Right.
especially our young kids, but be but be functioning through depression. It's called high functioning depression. And so we have to look for the subtleties, but look for the persistence or the consistency of them. That's not my child anymore. He's not talking to his friends. He's not going out and playing softball. He doesn't want to go to the movies. Doesn't want,
Right.
family dinners. And so yeah, so depression is a big thing, but this again, there's always help. There's always something we can do, but our kids are still being pressured as teens to just be socially acceptable, and so they conform.
I wanted to touch upon the treatments for depression. A lot of times, the first place people will go is medication. And
Hmm.
conversely, sometimes the first place people will go say, I'm not taking any drugs for this. I can do it on my own. There's got to be a happy medium for those two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, both are good things to use, okay? Therapists and medication. But again, some of the biggest things is trusting people who love you to tell you that you need help
Mhm.
because we can hide in plain sight.
Right.
And often we hide from ourselves first. And so people who love us would tell us, you're not right. Something's not right. I see changes in you. And we may not see it, we may see it and we may blow it off. Or we may be so caught up in our depression because we have levels of depression. We have what we call appropriate depression. Then we have moderate. Then we have transient, mild, moderate, and then we have severe, or we call complicated.
Okay.
Okay. And so people who know us, who we love and we trust, will let us know something is not right. And so we need to be able to first trust what people are telling us. I see changes in you.
Right.
And then be open to whatever it takes to get some help. Because this is some of the things that people, I don't think, recognize. Depression is a clinical mental disorder, and we may have some mental health issues, but mental health issues that go left untreated or unobserved or approached or addressed become mental health illnesses. And the simple difference is between the two is a diagnosis.
Right.
And we don't have to always wait for a diagnosis if we see symptoms. And so we have to be able to let people share with us, I see some change, I see something that's not right, and then go with whatever treatments are available. I mean, take a pill if you have to take a pill. Doesn't mean you have to be on
Right.
it for a lifetime. It's okay. See a clinician. It doesn't mean you have to go for a lifetime. But I tell you, I've been to a therapist that, once or twice in my life. I love my therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know why, Patricia? What I find that they do, they introduce you to you, right? Does that
Oh,
make
a
sense?
wonderful way of putting it. That's excellent.
They,
Excellent way
they
of
introduce you
describing
to
it.
you,
Yes.
the things that you overlook and the things you don't see.
Right.
Because if we saw it, we would do something about it.
Right.
Typically, it's like if we see a hair at a place, we're going to try to put it
Yeah.
in place,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the
And
same
we
thing.
see things in other people, right?
Yes,
Like we're very easily recognized in other people.
that's exactly right.
So yeah, that's what, I think family support, again, I ask people to just kind of pay attention to what people are telling you. It may sound
Yes,
like wah, 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 but people are saying it because they care, and
right.
absolutely to pay attention. Leah, do we all have the capacity to heal and find peace in our later years?
Yeah, 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 we do most definitely. Um, I think we have to stop being so hard on ourselves, for one, and be open to be able to do some things new and different. If something doesn't work, okay, you tried a couple of times, but don't let that be as they say, a killjoy for everything. We all have the capability of finding peace and joy. We may sometimes have to do it as a collective body, like, we were talking about, like book clubs, join something that you always had interest in, maybe not, never had a chance to yet do, because it's never too late.
Right.
So yeah, we all have opportunity to still find peace, still find joy, still find, our purpose, if you will, if we feel that we're not really living our dream or our purpose in life. But absolutely, as a people, as long as we have the capability and the capacity to still think, okay? Some of us, may have some issues where that is no longer a thing, but those of us who can still make healthy decisions, most definitely, yes, we still have opportunities to do that.
Leah, I wish you all the health and happiness and success in the world. And I want to thank you so much for joining us here, Dr. Leah Reddick Cunningham, nurse educator and expert on all things mental health. Thank you so much for joining us, sharing your valuable information. She can be reached at www drleahreddickcunningham.com. And you can also reach out to me for more information about Leah's services and programs. And of course, Leah, I want to know what you like about getting older.
Well, for one, still having the ability to have significant purpose. I think that we think as we get older, we think we don't still have a purpose. In my older years in life, I'm still able to write. I'm still able to have, well thoughts and happy thoughts. And so being able to still write books and to have vivid conversations and be able to share and contribute to society and to other people's well-being. So aging well and just being able to explore things I haven't done before. So still finding purpose. We don't get older and start losing purpose. We're not insignificant. Actually we're wiser and more significant if you think
Yes,
about it
yes.
like that.
Listen, we're so we feel irrelevant and yet we're so relevant.
Yes, most
Thank you
definitely.
again.